Hello, welcome to this month's Care Partner Meetup. We're kind of, as folks are coming in, I want to just kind of get us kicked off with a nice welcome. I'm Jenna Deidel. I'm our Vice President of Programs and Community Impact, and I get the great pleasure of joining this amazing panel on a monthly basis to help get questions answered. So really, I'm here to help. We also have staff in the background to help with that. And that's really the theme of what we do here at the meetup. We share, we ask questions, we discuss, we share links, we share resources, and we hopefully walk away with something that can help us every single month. So that's really what we're doing here today. We'll let our wonderful hostess with the mostest, Connie Carpenter Phinney, do another round of the rest of the beautiful faces that are joining you today.
Thank you, Jenna. It's great to be here. Again, I'm Connie Carpenter Phinney. I'm one of the co-founders of the Davis Phinney Foundation. Been living with Parkinson's now for over 25 years. Davis was diagnosed in 2000. I'm joined by Gail Gitin, who is also from Boulder, Colorado, and an amazing ambassador for the Care Partner population, amazing friend to anybody who's a care partner. Her husband, Gene, died 5 years ago, and she's just been such a wealth of information. Appreciate having you here, Gail. Thank you. And joining us from Las Vegas is the ever-intrepid Pat Donahoo, who, Pat, I'm going to ask you in a couple minutes to give us an update. Pat is a school teacher. He's taken the afternoon off for a really important doctor appointment for his wife who has Parkinson's, and I'm going to let Pat let you update us on that. But let me first introduce our special guest today and get our listeners kind of thinking about questions that they might have. We have the occupational therapist, Nancy Hillmer, with us. And welcome, Nancy. And Nancy was here in October and gave us a lot of tips for helping us and our person with Parkinson's to get up off the floor, which gets increasingly more challenging as the disease progresses, but also with aging. And, you know, it's incumbent on us to stay strong and to learn new techniques to be able to manage. And so I wanted to have Nancy back somewhat selfishly because I missed her in October. While she was discussing how to avoid falls, I had my own fall and broke my hand and was probably having surgery about the time that we were having our Care Partner Meetup in October. And I can, yes, laugh about it now, but it is something that we all want to avoid. And especially as care partners, we try so hard to stay healthy. And staying physically healthy, staying agile, staying strong is so important. So, Nancy, tell us a little bit about your background and how you've had a wealth of experience with people with Parkinson's. So, just let our listeners know a little bit more about that, and let's see if people have questions.
Okay, well, I've been an occupational therapist for about 45 years now, and I worked over half of that time in home care. And in 2008, I decided, because I had a friend whose husband had Parkinson's, I decided that I wanted to learn a lot more about it. And I'd hardly had anybody with Parkinson's on my caseload prior to that, which is kind of unusual, but true. So anyway, I started out with an LSBT big training with Becky Farley back in 2008, came back, had five people on my caseload all of a sudden with Parkinson's. And I said, hey, you guys game? Because I want to try this. I didn't know there was anything that we could do. So we got to work, and it was just amazing to me that we were no longer treating people with Parkinson's as these very fragile people who needed to be protected and adapted for and all that. Instead, the whole idea was, let's get in there and push and really see what the potential is here, because we got a lot of untapped potential. And that's what I was seeing. So I got super excited and then did every course imaginable on Parkinson's, multiple trips down to Arizona to work with Becky Farley at her retreats, and and started a whole big community at the hospital so that the entire staff from home care all the way to the emergency room, knew what to expect. And how to deal with Parkinson's. And then in more recent years, I've semi-retired, but I didn't want to give up my Parkinson's stuff. So I am in the community now, and I'm really loving that because that was the gap that I saw. Insurance companies only pay for so much treatment, and yet people with Parkinson's need to be doing something on a regular, daily, if not weekly basis to be as good as possible. That's what I do now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I want to commend you not only for working with this community because we need you, but also to say that, and I think most people listening will relate to this, is that what I find with people with Parkinson's are especially stubborn in a lot of ways, which sometimes is difficult to get them out of some of their habits. But they're also fiercely stubborn about being able to do things, And so I think that as an occupational therapist, this is rewarding, right? Because your clientele, they want to be able to get up off the couch, get up off the floor. They don't want to be falling,
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to manage. And sometimes the symptoms get ahead of them. Sometimes the medications aren't working properly. And so I think that, we can talk a little bit about that, but also want to talk about how the care partner, how we ourselves can stay strong and agile, as I said earlier, to be able to manage. And I'm really glad, Jenna, that you just put in the chat the program that Becky Farley created, because that is a really pioneering program for people with Parkinson's to get them exercising. And so while people are thinking about questions, and I see a few coming in, which I love, I just want Pat update us on SID and what you guys have been going through.
Well, yes, thank you. Well, it's been about a 3-year process, but Sydney had DBS surgery back in 2018, and
DBS is deep brain stimulation for those of you that don't know.
And I want to start out by saying that our experience is not typical of most people, and so don't get too freaked out by it. But when she had it in 2018, 7 years ago, we realized shortly afterwards that the doctor didn't do something right. He actually put the leads into the wrong place based on what her Parkinson's is like. The long and short, she has diphasic dyskinesia, which is a rare thing where she goes off when she's off when she's dyskinetic when she's going on, and she's dyskinetic when she's going off. And so to do that, to manage that with DBS, you need to have more electrical impulses going in. And the doctor said there's no such thing as that kind of dyskinesia. We argued about it all the time. But he put the leads into the STN, and that allows her to not get enough electricity to stimulate the dopamine and so forth. And it created not just more, but violent dyskinesia. And so we've been tracking that down. She also developed extreme anxiety. That I can't even, well, now hopefully we're looking backwards on that now, because I'm not looking back, I'm looking forward. So moving forward, we have a new doctor. We got rid of that one, and we got a new doctor who knew everything about diphasic dyskinesia. And we went through all the different, we tried everything to bypass having to do more surgery. All the new technologies as they came out, we tried them and we've done them. I say we because we both, I experienced it with her, but not actually as a person with Parkinson's, but as a care partner. And so about a year ago, we came to the conclusion that surgery is the only route that we're going to be able to do to fix it. And so that was when we found what we have learned to be one of the top neurosurgeons on the West Coast anyway, and out of Phoenix. And we went to Phoenix and had the MRIs. We did all the work. She went in and had the deep brain stimulation surgery about 3 weeks ago, and then she's been healing up. A week ago, last Tuesday, she went in and had her battery put in, and the power plant all ready to be turned on, which is happening this afternoon, which hasn't yet. Yes.
So, and just to clarify, and I know this is complicated for people who aren't familiar with DBS, and we won't get in it too much, but I mean, Pat, you have a loyal following here of people that have been following your journey and know how much, how difficult it's been. And I think, Pat's shown just incredible fortitude in searching for the right doctors. And it's something we talk a lot about on this meetup is if your doctor is not working for you, if your doctor does not get you or your person with Parkinson's, because you do matter, by the way. And if your doctor's not listening to you as the care partner, it's time to shop around, and it's not easy because if you live in a rural area or if you can't afford to travel, as Pat and Pat's a school teacher, but he made it work. He found the right doctor in Phoenix, and they've made it work. They've just prioritized it, and wow, not easy, right? So I just wanted to say, Pat, that we're all behind you, and we really hope that today, this is a big day for those of you not familiar with deep brain stimulation. When the battery pack, which is like a pacemaker for the heart, only it's for the leads in your brain, is switched on, and there's a lot of magic that goes in, almost like voodoo magic, to get the person up and working properly. And it is amazing. And my husband had that in 2008, and he's been fortunate to have had a really good experience with that. So Pat, yeah, I think everybody, if you just take a moment, maybe this afternoon, and just think about Sid and Pat, and let's just hope that going forward, this is a real breakthrough, because you guys, saying you deserve it isn't really correct, but we all deserve a break where Parkinson's concerned.
It's not so much about me or her, but it's about we want to be able to share our experience with everyone, to be able to live our lives better, and hopefully not have to go through what we did.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, Jenna, what's the first best question for Nancy that we got?
Good question. First, I just want to also acknowledge our love and good wishes to Pat and Sid. If you don't know, Pat and Sid are actually founding members of our ambassador program. So, as Gail is also a member of that program. So if you need support, just a reminder, ambassadors are also a great group to do. And they are people like Pat, Sid, and Gail who have committed their, a portion of their lives, and a large portion, to doing exactly what Pat just said. The being there and the calling back to the crew to say what you learned. Yeah. Which we really need. Another thing that has already come up in our conversation that we really need is great members of our care team. And so actually what I think I'll do, just to kind of level set here. I know, Nancy, you joined us in October, but for those of us who might be new, and especially for those of us who might still be navigating putting together and assessing our care team, I find that occupational therapy is one of the most misunderstood elements of what people can lean on, right? And I suspect it's underutilized because of that. So if you wouldn't mind, just, I think you probably have given this snapshot to people a million times in your career. But what role does occupational therapy play? And what are some of the things, to get people thinking and asking questions? What are some of the things that you help families with, and individuals and care partners with?
Yeah, it's a really good question, actually. And it's taken me 45 years to figure out how to try to answer it, and I don't think I've gotten there yet. It's functional. We're functional people. So we're looking, and that's why I loved, I'll put in a plug here, I loved home care. because unless you see people in their home environment and dealing with that couch in their house or that toilet or that shower or whatever, you don't really know what their challenges are. You can make stuff up in the clinic, and that's not to say that there aren't great clinicians in the outpatient clinics. There are. But until you see somebody in their home and see what they're dealing with, and also likewise what their care partners are dealing with, and how they're managing the situation, it's a whole different ballgame. So yeah, we go into the home. Well, I would go into the home and home care, and first thing I would do is just say, "Show me around. Show me every place you hang out. What do you do? Where are the trouble spots? If you have freezing, where do you freeze? If you've fallen, where have you fallen? What were the circumstances?" And we might also, I like to get out in the community as well. So I'm always like, yeah, and what about the things you're doing? Did you fall playing pickleball? Did you fall on the hike? What kind of equipment were you using? Are you having trouble getting on and off that bike? Is the electric bike really heavy and hard to manage? Whatever it is, it's all functional. Could be driving too. We were talking earlier about driving. How do you manage that? So any functional task, whether it's trying to get yourself up and ready in the morning, or making a meal, taking care of kids, walking your dog, doing your activities that you enjoy, socialize, it's all fair game. And all the things that go into that, physical, cognitive, emotional.
You're working specifically, very specifically, but you're leaving people with tasks, maybe either to improve, like remove, area rugs, or add grab bars, or declutter, things like that, and on top of exercises as well?
Yes. So what we would do is we would look at it in several different ways. First, what do you need to change about yourself? So what are the conditions that are causing the problem, that you can't do what you formerly did? And want to continue doing. So maybe we can rehabilitate you to a certain extent, or maybe we can change the way that you're doing it, so that, so we modify the task itself. And if you change the way you're doing it, then that, like sitting to get dressed, for example, instead of standing, that's a pretty simple one.
Wait, repeat that? That everybody needs to hear that again, because this is like the constant reminder. Yes, what was that?
Sit to get dressed, because it's really hard it's not impossible to fall from a chair, but it's really hard to fall from a chair compared to falling from standing up. And if you did, the injuries would be much less severe. Anyway, so you take all that into consideration. And then what you were saying, Connie, about modifying the environment itself. So that couch, for example, that's my couch. Used to be downstairs with my parents who lived with us, and it's super low and soft. And so I had it up on pedestals. And of course, now an occupational therapist who might come in and say that also needs to consider, if you're going to put something up on pedestals, is it still safe? Because it needs to be up against a wall if it's on, so you're looking at all these different things. Throw rugs, you're looking at the heights of beds and chairs, you're looking at grab bars. Where are they placed? Is it really effective? Is it accomplishing the job? In the kitchen, it could be all kinds of things. Anyway, it goes on and on and on, depending on what the task is.
Yeah, great point.
And it's really fun. It's super fun. That's why I like it.
We're lucky to have people like you, Nancy, who love that problem and can come in and bring energy to challenges that I'm sure are probably go deep sometimes for families. And I do want to, I think we might do a kind of a lightning round of some different strategies that we could share today for people to walk away with to think about with their person. But before we do that, I did want to inquire a little bit. So you talked about home care. Is that a typical way that people will see an occupational therapist? Is there anything special that people need to look for if they're hearing this and they're like, man, can I just beam Nancy to my house to do all this for me? What does it look like for someone who's interested in accessing that? And do you have to look for anything special, or do you have to qualify in any kind of way to gain access to that?
That's a tough question right now, because a lot of the services have a lot of insurance companies, or I should say even our own hospital in Boulder, I'm really sorry to say, has eliminated their home care department. I'm very sorry to say that, because we had an excellent program, and we really, we had a team that specialized in Parkinson's. So number one, I would say, if you're going to have a therapist, an occupational therapist come in, make sure that they understand Parkinson's, because there are a lot of really specific things that you want to know about where this is heading, because you want to head it off at the pass. You want to get ahead of that curve, and try to keep things rolling along as smoothly as possible for as long as possible. And that takes really getting what's going to happen down the road if nothing else changes. So that's really important. But to get to the main point, how do you get those services? You'd have to have a referral from a doctor, and hopefully your movement disorder specialist is connected with such an occupational therapist, and hopefully they will do a home assessment, if not multiple ones, and really get in there and dig into the home situation. That's what I would consider really good care. It should be there, but
So that's good to know. I think that's hard to hear, but also good to know. I think it's good to know what we might be up against, when we try to go put into action some of the things we learn in spaces like this. So I guess too, if knowing that the environment is such, and also just knowing that access varies, I would guess people can still benefit from going to see an occupational therapist in a practice or in office too. So I want to make sure we're talking about the home environment. I think I saw a lot of comments in the chats, a lot of nodding. We can see the value there. And if that's too tricky to get to, an occupational therapist can still be a team member. And I would guess even without having all of the tools at your fingertips, can still offer you some tips that you can implement inside your home to make it.
Oh, absolutely. And the occupational therapists that I'm familiar with who have specialized in outpatient settings are amazing. They are like, they kind of can read your mind almost.
Because we all need that.
Yeah. But they're really good at predicting things. Again, it's more about how much experience have you had with Parkinson's, and that would be the whole range, I would suggest, not just early onset, although I hope people get in early so you can sort of get started early on making some adaptations and working on some skills that will help you. But also, like I said, knowing what you're trying to prevent long-term and postpone. I mean, we can't prevent it forever at this point, but we can really add a lot of good years of quality. And I think that's what's really important.
Well, and certainly falling is, the precursor to a steep decline in symptoms for people with Parkinson's. And so it's somebody asked the question is, why don't you qualify for home care until you're completely disabled, which is such a fair question, but it just goes hand in hand with our dysfunctional, system as a whole. But I think too that just the resources available, and I know, in our Every Victory Counts manual and on our website, we have several different articles about how to make your home safer, and somebody I saw too asked about even just building a new home and trying to be, as preemptive as possible. And there's so many simple things that you can do, grab bars, walk in showers without a lip, these kinds of things that will help keep your person more safer for longer. Gail, did you have something?
I was wondering if palliative care helps out with home occupational therapists.
I believe that that's part of their staffing. I wish I could answer these questions better for you. I really can't because I'm not in the system anymore.
I can answer that a little bit just because yesterday we actually had a 1.5 hour consult with palliative care for the first time. And it did not come up. Now, we didn't ask about it, but they're also affiliated with quite a big group in Denver. And so I think had we asked, had that been top of mind, I would have an answer for you today. So I probably should have asked that question. But I think that that's part of the problem. Somebody also noted that with rural care, where you're typically not able to go to a big movement disorder practice that has other practitioners in there, that would account for creating a palliative care setting. And, that's why we have those a lot more on the website about these things. But it is super challenging. And I've seen that firsthand how helpful occupational therapy can be. Important. Yeah.
Palliative care seemed to be a lot more liberal with various things. Hospice, absolutely no. There's no additional PT or anything once you're in hospice. That's why I had Gene in hospice, and I realized that means that he wasn't going to be getting any physical therapy. So then I switched back to palliative care, and it was not a deal to switch back. So don't think once you're in hospice, you're stuck there. Look into palliative care.
Now, a really good comment from Jean Quam, who said that in South Carolina, in her practice, they do have under the same umbrella palliative and hospice, which again, doesn't this just confuse you? Because every state's going to be different. Every insurance company is going to be different. Every movement disorder practice or lack thereof will be different. And so it's up to all of us. And that's why as a care partner, and especially if you're kind of new in the game and you think, you're new, you're with someone who's newly diagnosed or quite able, you're not thinking about that, right? And so I think that's what, Nancy, you're saying is try to have it across a broad spectrum of years. And if our mentality was more to seek this kind of help early on, we'd be better prepared when our person has a downturn. Because sometimes the downturns in Parkinson's are quite transient. Somebody gets a bad flu and their symptoms ratchet up. The flu brings them down, symptoms are up, everything's harder and becomes more dangerous. And then if you have an accident on top of that, it just puts you in a deep hole. So I think that's that's great advice right there, is just to push people a little harder toward being proactive.
I would say regarding hospice, the big pro that I see about hospice, and I use this for both of my parents, they did not have Parkinson's, but they had other issues, and I was pushing for them to get into it as soon as possible. But I'm an occupational therapist, so I already knew what I wanted, and the benefit of hospice was I could get any equipment I wanted, and I could get the right kind of equipment. And in home care, oh my gosh, I spent so much time in loan closets and scrapping around here and there and everywhere trying to find what I wanted for people. There's actually a lot more equipment out there now that I wish we had because it's always getting better. But I would say that an occupational therapist or a physical therapist can really help you to make those big decisions. Like, do I want to renovate my bathroom? That's expensive. Do I want to move to a new house because I've got stairs? I've had people ask me, would you come out and just see if I need to move? Because I've got all these stairs. And I'm like, well, some people with Parkinson's do better on the stairs than they do on a straightaway. And so it's very individual what's going to be helpful. And oftentimes the things that we suggest are very MacGyver-like. It's just like, give me some duct tape and I'll fix this problem for you. I'll stick an extra cushion under that chair and I'll make that work for you. Or I can move this around and so it's going to work for you. Or I'll put one grab bar in and you're done. It's not necessarily making these huge changes. But if you are going to make a huge change, I would definitely recommend having an OT or a PT come out and say, I saw that a lot with a number of years ago. The tubs where you could walk into the tubs and it would fill up, and those were nightmares for my folks with Parkinson's. And yet they look like such a good idea.
Yeah, and a lot of people with Parkinson's have a lot of aches and pains and want to be soaking in a tub, and it's impossible to get it out. So that's a really good. That could be money well spent if you have to pay yourself out of pocket for an OT to get a consult ahead of some of these big decisions. I have a friend as well whose father has Parkinson's, who has just gone off and tried to renovate a bathroom without a lot of thinking and without having all the contractors in place, making it the whole situation difficult. So especially if you're talking to your parents or, some questionable decision making up front in terms of how they're thinking, like how much time this is going to take, it is hard. It's very hard to do the right thing in that situation, and getting some advice up front and conferring with all the interested party, whether it's your children or, your spouse, would be wise. I think that's also great advice.
You brought up earlier, Connie, was the idea of training the care partners. Sometimes it's amazing to me. Well, I'll go into a home or a situation with a care partner there and the person with Parkinson's, and I'll just watch them at first, and then I'll say, let's do that again. Could I just give you a little cue here? And I'll say, okay, do it this way. Very simple cue. And all of a sudden, their partner will be like, "What? I've never seen him do that." And it's would be like a cue to prevent their freezing as they're, dealing with a certain situation, maybe where to put their feet, or trying not to freeze on a long straightaway or a narrow corridor or a change. It'd be some little strategy, and it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Or, getting in and out of bed, that, ending up lying crosswise across the bed, and then the care partner's trying to help them get organized, where I'm like, well, if we did it a slightly different way, or if you bent the knees a little bit more, or if you did this.
So the point is, when you come into the home, you being but also the generic occupational therapist that specializes in Parkinson's, we want to make sure as a care partner that we are witnessing, taking notes, maybe videotaping.
Oh yeah, videotaping is great. Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
There's lots, and just using good body mechanics. So a great example I can give you, and I might have done this in October, was this couple that I'd seen, because when I started doing this was back before there was a lot of treatment going on for Parkinson's, and so people had been given the diagnosis. They went home and just kind of decided, well, that's my fate, and here I'm going to be, and my partner's just going to help me. So it was this woman who had the Parkinson's. Her husband was, he's a big guy, strong and capable. And for years, he had been, every time she needed to get up, he would grab her arms and pull her up from the toilet, up from the chairs, up from the bed. And by the time I got there, she had bad shoulders and he had a bad back. And a little bit of training could have prevented that.
Yeah. You got two specific questions in the chat. One was about freezing in a door frame, and the other was, wait, how do you get the person not to take up the whole bed? So if you want to address those.
Yeah, that, well, I can sort of show you. Freezing at Gait, though, there are all kinds of different types of freeze. Well, freezing is just simply when the feet stop moving. And for different people, it happens at different times. I'm going to get up and kind of demonstrate. So sometimes a common one is turning. So you want to turn, and everything turns, especially your head turns, which is usually the first thing to turn. That's common, but the feet don't. And so you end up with something like this, where your whole body's going in that direction, but you trip over your own feet because that first foot didn't turn. And so what I do in my groups and with individuals is we work on just getting that foot. If I'm going to turn that way, first thing I'm going to do is think about my foot turning. But going through a doorway, that's another thing where you're coming up to a change, and it could be like, here's a rug, and it's different from the floor. And even if there's no, ink, like this one, you could trip over that. But even one that's a smooth transition, sometimes just the look of it, the fact that it's a change, can cause a person who's coming along pretty good to just suddenly stop. And it's a change. It's making them think about, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Because you're seeing the change, but your body's not sensing what to do about it. I used to take a fellow hiking, and we got up to this one section where we were above tree line, and all of a sudden you're like having to navigate rocks. And he was describing how suddenly this man who had been going along just fine for this whole 3 miles up the trail, he saw those rocks, and having to make the decision about where to put his feet, he just rose and he couldn't do it. So any kind of a change, a narrow doorway can do that. So what you want to do is try to kind of, and this is something you can practice, maybe come up with, like I always say, okay, if you want to get through that doorway, we'll say it's right here. How do you find out where they want to go? So say I'm going to go over to that hassock there and sit down. So I want you to tell me how many steps it's going to take to get from here to there, and count them as you go. So we start off and they count 1, 2, 3. And again, this is where the partner might say, I've never seen them go through that door like that. The problem, or the solution in that case, was getting their mind off of that change and onto, what's it going to take? What do my feet have to do to get there? It's putting the focus on the feet that needs to be.
Nancy, those are great tips. And I would say, too, because Davis has experienced freezing, that a couple other things. One is, like, in a doorway, if they're already stuck there, and if you're there with them, if you can just kind of tilt them a little bit side to side.
Yeah, I always call that stop, rock, and roll. It's the same as, like, if you were at a little kid, at a fire department, and they say, well, if you ever catch your clothes on fire, you stop, drop, and roll. If you are freezing with Parkinson's, you stop, you rock, and then you can roll. Because you're just you're trying to get the weight to shift. And with the freezing, often the feet are pretty close together. They tend to be too close for the most part. And the person's just dead center, afraid to shift. I find a lot of people are really afraid to shift their weight and really, but it all starts with, where are the feet? So if your feet are together, just a little bit of shifting, and you can do that by just even taking a hold of their belt and just very gently, because it's going to be scary for somebody who's not used to this. Practice it, and just a little bit of a tug from one side to the other, and say, let's just rock, get your feet apart, and we'll rock, and when you're ready, just roll along. And they will know. They'll just do it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Other people freeze because they get to a certain place. I'm going to get a chair here. They get to a certain place, and They want to come into that chair, and yet the closer they get to their target, the more the feet start to freeze, and you get into this kind of stuttery step thing. And so sometimes a really simple solution is just to put a couple pieces of tape on the floor and say, okay, forget about sitting on the chair. I just want you to go and stand on the tape marks. And that helps them just to know, okay, that's what I'm doing. Now go ahead and sit. But if you don't do that, a lot of times they'll either start to kind of, if they're freezing, they'll start to kind of do the stuttery thing as they get closer, or they'll do what I call an airplane landing instead of a helicopter landing. So I'm going to land right there. As an airplane, I'm in a hurry. I want to get to that seat. And all I'm thinking about is my hips in the chair. So I get lower and lower and then kind of slide in like that. But what you want is to have people break that down into steps. And so instead of saying, go sit in that chair, I'll say, go stand on the lines. Now sit. So you break it down for them. And it helps them to focus on one thing at a time. So that would be a helicopter landing where you put your pieces of tape there. Go stand on the tape. Now it might be hard for them to come in this way and make that full turn. So maybe you want to come from the other direction. Maybe it's easier to come from behind the chair, come up to it, and then step across. Most people find that stepping side to side is easier than making it. Turns tend to be the hardest.
Okay.
Those are a few pointers. I don't know if that helps.
No, that's super helpful. And I think for anyone that has experience, the whole concept of freezing that seems like kind of bizarre to get your mind around is that it is so much in the mind, but it's the feet. And you will notice your person with Parkinson's, it's as if their feet are stuck to the ground. And you think maybe they have the wrong shoes on, or something. But it's really this whole phenomena that's that there are many workarounds for, but it can be quite debilitating and lead to a number of accidents. So let's move along from that, though. But boy, that was super helpful, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. That got me thinking of a lot of things. And now we have 10 minutes. I don't know how that always happens in this wonderful meetup, but it sure does. But kind of pivoting a little bit, thinking about freezing, there's a number of pieces of technology that sort of have come onto the market or on the market to, aim at helping people to deal with some things. There's pieces of technology for freezing. There's adaptive utensils. There's all kinds of things. And so, as an OT and someone who helps solve, be the problem solver with folks, oftentimes these pieces of technology are not particularly accessible to everybody. I wonder if you can help advise a little bit on, are there some places where you really do see like they can be a relatively low investment or relatively accessible, and they're great additions into people's problem solving? And are there things that you're like, don't worry too much about that, really focus on working with an OT? Can you help people navigate this sort of landscape of, oh, that'll just solve your problem, buy this spoon or buy these pairs of shoes or whatever that thing might be?
Yeah, it's going to be really different depending on the person. I hate to say that because it would be easier if I said there was one solution. Of course, they have the U-step walkers. Those have become kind of popular, and they're specifically made for Parkinson's. It's a walker that is it's sort of a surround sound walker. And the advantages, there's always advantages and disadvantages. That's why it's helpful to have somebody kind of work through that with you. The advantage is that it's a pretty stable walker, so it doesn't tip easily. If you're looking at walkers, probably the worst one would be those little triangle ones, where they have a point and those are super nice if you need to get into a bathroom. Some of them will even kind of come in and then out, but they're not stable. So if you need them to not tip over, they're not going to really help you. No walker will help you if you tend to fall backwards. None of them. Okay, but the U-step, the feature of that a lot of people use is it has a little laser beam that goes across the bottom, and it gives you a target for your feet. Well, you already have a target for your feet if you wanted to use it with a regular standard walker. I always tell people, if you're using that walker, kick your heels to the wheels, to the back wheels. It's a target, but the line gives you a more specific one. When I was in home care, I always carried a laser pointer with me. And I would just, as I was walking with somebody, I would just say, okay, step over the dot, step over the dot, step over the dot.
So that could be a suggestion right there, is for people to get a little laser pointer when things get tough, just to help out.
Oh yeah, it can really help. Or I've said, okay, because people, I like to add a little bit of danger into it, because you want to kind of rev up the emotion sometimes. And so I'll say, I'm going to put my hand right down in front of your foot. Step over it. Don't step on my hand, or don't step on my foot. And it will get people going who are frozen. You can do all kinds of little silly things, but I think they can help to get out of a pickle.
Yeah.
So there's lots of little strategies that you can use. I've gone through people's homes and putting that's a terrible putting pieces of tape at specific lines so that they can step over the tape each time. And a person who was basically using falling as a mechanism for walking, he would just kind of lean into things and fall into it, and then find the next thing and lean in. And that's how he got through his house. He lived alone. And so I went through the whole house and put tape, and he was able to just walk through the whole thing. How did I know that? Because I saw him go down the stairs, and it was a terrifying experience to just say, okay, I'm going to just close my mouth and say, how do you get down those stairs to your laundry room? Because you do this all the time, right? He goes, yep, no problem. He flies down the stairs. And I was shocked, but it told me that this is a guy who needs targets. He does well with targets.
Yeah.
So not everybody does, but he did. And that worked for him. So again, doesn't have to be super expensive or
but it does take expertise, and I think that's what you're really pointing up to all of us. We only have 5 minutes left. Jenna, do you want a lightning round? Do Pat or Gail have anything they want to jump in with? Gail?
Oh, one of the things I used to do is, because my husband would get up from a sofa, he would push his weight push his weight into the sofa, and the sofa would start moving back, hitting the walls, hitting whatever was behind that. I bought door stops, and I put door stops under the feet of the sofa in the back to prevent it from sliding backwards when he tried to get up, and he would move it. And I still have them. I never did take them away, because I have the stained glass piece behind my sofa. And every time he got up, I thought, oh, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And it works, because every time he would sit down somewhere, it got further and further back, and I'd have to have my walls repaired. So that worked great.
Yeah, nice. Jenna, what lightning round, anything to add?
I think we covered a lot of the things that we had questions on. And Nancy, thank you for getting up and demoing some of those things. And one other question we, did have was about whether OTs can help with things like technology use, cell phone use, using adaptive technologies within technology, things like that. Is that something that comes up in your space, or would you advise folks to kind of... What I've taken is ask your OT truly anything. If you're struggling with it, they're going to set you on the right path. But is that since we had that question specifically?
Well, I'm old, and so I was really glad that technology did not catch up with me before I semi-retired, because I'm not real techie. But But when something does come up, yeah, it can be a real advantage. And a big one that you'll see now is cars. Oh my gosh. The things that cars can do, because I think we were talking earlier about electric cars.
Before we went on live, yeah.
Yeah. I have a client right now who just bought his first electric car because he was concerned about his driving ability, especially at night. And yeah, that's a whole other thing, and we could come back and talk about that too, driving. But cars have so many new cars have so many features on them to help, detect if you're getting too close to things, to help you with backup cameras, if you're having trouble with turning and seeing or visual perception. And
Nancy, they're even parking for you.
yes, all that. It's really amazing what they can and can't do. Or if you're coming up on something too fast, they can brake. Amazing. So looking into new technology with cars is great. I always rely on my friend John Dean, who's a speech therapist, and I'm always calling him about the latest tech stuff because there are so many devices for communication as well that can help. So yes, many things that can be helpful.
I think the other thing is somebody asked early on about, trying to get Siri to understand their person with Parkinson's. And this is a huge challenge, but I know that there's been some studies done on that where they're trying to have the voice technology like Siri be more adaptive so that it can understand people who have trouble enunciating or, just being generally heard. I mean, I can ask Siri anything and very responsive, but Davis can't. And it's frustrating because that would be so helpful, right? So I think it's something that's not to give up on, but and to keep working on, and also to keep forcing, sorry to use the word forcing, but your person with Parkinson's to keep working on their speech.
Oh, yeah. And you can even get, this is my level of technology. I used to have a little meter on my phone. And so I could, it would show if the level of speech was loud enough, and they could control it and see how it was going. But the other thing I used to do before I had that was I'd just walk into another room and I'd say, would you please ask me that question again so I can hear it in the other room? And all of a sudden I would get this loud speech because they're expecting that they're having to speak louder. Or I would say, show me how you button your shirt and tell me each of the steps. But I'm in the balcony of the Buell. I want you to tell me, like, you're on stage and you're doing it with drama and a loud voice that projects. And so you can use little strategies like that. But what do we typically do? We come in closer and so they speak more softly because there's nothing demanded.
Does the U-Step walker, we just came across one and received a used one, and everything that Nancy was talking about is really great. Now ours, I haven't figured out the laser beam part yet, but it's a great walker.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the downside of the U-Step, because there's always a downside, is it's really hard to get in and out of a car because it's heavy and the wheels are small. And so it's more chattery when you're outdoors as opposed to the bigger wheels that roll more smoothly. So it's got its advantages and disadvantages, but indoors, it's a great thing.
Thank you, Nancy. And I will say, I think listening in on this conversation, I always learn a lot, both from our community and from our experts. So I think a takeaway that I would have from today is people are really kind of, you're going to find a way. And sometimes your way, you don't have to deal with everything that you're always dealing with. Ask someone like Nancy. ask someone like Gail or Pat who have tried something. And you might find something that's even relatively as simple as a doorstop to Gail's story that can improve something in your life. So I think that was a great takeaway. And, we'll share all these great resources and come back again for the meetup. We're going to be talking about holistic well-being next month in June, which is something I think we can always spend more time talking about with a couple of guests. And if you ever have suggestions for things you wish you were covering that you can't believe we haven't talked about, we want to hear it. So please reach out to us anytime to share those. We do listen and we do plan based on that. So thank you all. Have a wonderful month and we will see you next time. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate you the most.
Thanks, everybody.